Hey there my friends, Frederick here. So I thought I would document how I make this track from beginning to end using the Elektron machines, some virtual instruments in Nuendo, and tracking out the acoustic drums. So let's do it. I hope you like it. So I have 8 channels of the analog rhythm coming out of the back of the rhythm into the patch bay, coming up here as the bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat. A cymbal cowbell comes up on a channel, rim shot, clap, a high tom, middle tom, a low tom, and bass tom. So those come out here. I also have the main out of the analog 4 coming out here, and the main out of the Octatrack comes out here. So the 8 channels of the analog rhythm come up on channels 3 through 10 of the mixer. The analog 4 main out comes up on channel 11 and 12, and the Octatrack main out comes up on channels 13 and 14. Next, we're going to program a beat on the analog 4 and the analog rhythm and something on the Octatrack. I like to start with the analog rhythm because it is the main clock for the analog 4 and the Octatrack, and it gets its clock from Nuendo. So I start here. Function, global, create new. This takes us to projects. We're going to rename this project. So we've got a new project. So the next thing we want to do is to save a new kit. And I like to name the kit the same as the project, so it stays with the project. Analog 4, the same thing. Function, global, project, yes. Load project, yes. New project, yes. Okay, so now we have to set it up so the analog rhythm is sending clock and transport to both the analog 4 and the Octatrack. So we go function, global, MIDI config, yes. Sync, yes. Send clock, yes. Send transport, yes. And for the Octatrack to receive clock and transport, we go function, project, MIDI, sync, yes. Transport, receive, yes. Clock, receive, yes. And that's all I don't want. I don't want the program changes on any of these, just getting the clock from Nuendo. So the other important thing is how the MIDI clock comes from Nuendo to the different instruments, and basically Nuendo is sending MIDI to the Motu MIDI Express XT, and port 1 of the MIDI out on the Motu goes to the analog rhythm, and the analog rhythm then sends MIDI to both the analog 4 and the Octatrack. We'll start with the bass drum. This open hi-hat sounds kind of bright, so we'll maybe put a filter on that. So I like this part with the cymbal and the cowbell, but it's too much, and I don't want to make this a 4-bar loop, so let's use the TRIG conditions to make it play less. We will set the TRIG condition for the clap to be also 25%. So the analog rhythm drums are going to come up on groups 1 and 2 on the mixer. And we'll bring our reverb. This is the Yamaha Rev 7 on aux 3. We'll bring that in for maybe even some on the bass drum. Definitely on the snare drum. So now that we've got just a really basic groove going on, I know that I want to, I think I want to make it in C minor, because I played around a little bit on the keyboard here, and I liked how that sounds. So we're going to use a Rhodes patch from Native Instruments, KONTAKT, the SCARBEE Mark I, and just play some stuff in C minor. Anyway, so the reason that I like to start with a MIDI part this way is because if you start with a virtual instrument like the RHODES or something like this, the intonation when you go to the modular synth, but if you start with something that is, you know, the pitch is fixed, then you can tune to that as opposed to starting with a modular and then using tuners and trying to do all this. The STRYMON timeline delay is set to one of the reverse delay presets, the inward preset. So I know I want this to be longer than 1 bar, so we're going to make it all 4 bars. At this point, it's really important with especially the analog rhythm and the analog 4 to save all your work, because the way that the file structure works with the kits and the patterns and the projects, it's really a good habit to save all your work every time you make a change. Function, kit, save kit, yes. Function, pattern, save pattern, yes. Function, global, project, yes. Save project, yes. I like it. Definitely gonna add some acoustic drums, and the acoustic drums have to really gel with the electronic drums. And I would prefer to not have to quantize the acoustic drums, the live playing acoustic drums, so I'm just going to try to play with it and make it tight. But with that, I want to keep the electronic drums to be really simple, but I think I'd like to add one other thing, like an upbeat kind of clap, and I might double that with some overdubbed acoustic claps, but like a and I think to this as well we'll add some trig conditions so that it kind of plays off of the other thing, the other part, track 1. Tracks 1 through 7, I'm going to make those flex machines, and then track 8, I'm going to make it the master. Okay, so at this point, I think we've got enough with the Elektron machines. We've got our groove with the Octatrack going with ambient things. We've got our beat with the analog rhythm and some synth parts on the analog 4. So I'm just going to go through the Octatrack parts here just so you can see what they're adding. It's not a lot, but it's just 4 voices, and I think that's enough, and it kind of fills it out. So we added in just a little of the analog 4 reverb and a little of its delay, lengthen the decay and sustain, and I think maybe we'll just see what happens if we up the release, maybe a lot. See what happens. And then back it down. I'm going to just do a live mix of the of everything that's going on so far on the mixer here with some effects, synth throws and things like this. And then after that, maybe I'll pull the patch down out of the patch bay and repatch it so that I can multi-track the drums. Analog rhythm comes out here on the patch bay, the outputs here. We have that patch to the line inputs of the mixer here, and then the direct outs of each channel of the mixer are normaled to the Pro Tools input, or in this case Nuendo. We've got direct out 3. The bass drum is coming into the mixer line 3 from here, and channel 3, and then the direct out of channel 3 is normal to the input of channel 3 on the converters. And so we're gonna just do a pass where we get all of the drums tracked out individually so that we can edit later. You might wonder like why I'm tracking it all the way as opposed to just like a 1 or 2 bar loop, 1 or 2 bars and then loop it, but that's because I'm not using any of the samples on the analog rhythm. It's just the analog drum synthesis sounds, and so there are all kinds of slight variations in the sound the longer it goes, and that's part of the appeal of using an analog drum machine like that. It doesn't sound just exactly the same. So I feel like if I track it all the way out, it sounds a little better. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm recording the first track on the Analog 4, and I'm kind of mixing between the effects return, just only hearing the effects return here of the Big Sky and the Yamaha Rev 7, and kind of mixing between the dry signal and adding the effects back in, sometimes just having only the effect return. And so we'll do the same thing now with tracks 2 through 5 and just record those, mixing in the effects and the dry signal to taste back and forth. So here, in addition to the balance between the dry signal and the effects returns, I'm also tracking the some panning on the effects returns to just kind of give it a little bit of movement. And I don't really have any particular way. I'm just kind of whatever sounds good against the delay repeats. And the other thing is you can pan the synth, the stereo synth channels hard left and right, and even pan the delay hard left and right, but keep the reverb center so that you continue to get at least some amount of signal on both channels, but it's weighted toward one side or the other depending on which way you pan. So you can pan the synth all the way to the left and pan the delay all the way to the left, but keep the reverb in the center. The key here to this whole wet-dry thing with the effect is sending the channel to the aux-in pre-fader, so that way you can pull the dry signal completely out and record the effects return. Because if you send the channel post-fader, then when you pull the faders down, it's going to take it out of the effects return. Okay, so now I have everything from the Elektron machines multi-tracked out into Nuendo, and I've got the one RHODES patch from KONTAKT bounced out into audio as well, and I think we're going to record some live drums. Okay, so the drums should be coming up on channels 3 through 8 of the mixer. And the way that I like to track this is all the drums are just panned center, except the overheads, obviously panned hard left and right, because that's a stereo pair. And then I have some EQ on each channel, just taking some of the top end down and notching out a little bit at 350. So I'm close micing the drums here with just some really inexpensive microphones, mostly SM57, Shure SM57s, and the drums are a set of 1942 Slingerland rolling bombers. So we've got here the Beta 52 on the bass drum, and it's just a little off center of the drum. Got a 57 on the snare drum with a stand, and we've got a 57 on the mounted tom, mounted to the rim, and the same with the floor tom. And then these are the MXL pencil condensers that we have for overheads. So the mic lines go through here, through my secret passage, to this Proco SMA snake. I like this one because it has both XLR and TRS inputs on the snake. We're going to patch the outputs of the drum microphones into the line inputs, the mic inputs here on the mixer. And so the way that I have it coming up on the mixer is the main outs of Nuendo are on channels 1 and 2 of the mixer, so we're going to come in on channel 3. So we'll patch out of snake to input channel 3. That's the bass drum, snare drum, mounted tom, floor tom, and the overheads. So I just wanted to say something about the height of the drum overheads. Normally when you see overheads, they're at the same physical height. But the issue with that is that if you measure the distance from the center of the snare drum to the microphone capsule, and you get the same distance, you'll see that the microphones aren't actually level with each other. One will be higher than the other one. And the reason that's a good thing is because of the phase relationship. You want the physical distance from the center of the drum set, which is the snare drum, to be the same for each of the left and right overheads. And an easy way to do that is when you set up the microphones, just measure it out with a mic cable from the center of the snare drum to the microphone capsule. And then you'll have better phase relationship with the overhead. So we could just track this down just like this, and it would be fine. And then we could just use all the compressors in Nuendo and plugins. But what I like to do is to use channels 1 and 2 of this ART Pro VLA2 compressor for the kick and the snare of the drum set. So I usually send the bass drum to channel 1 and the snare drum to channel 2, and I have the compressor set to dual mono as opposed to linked stereo. And I use, for this, I use a ratio of 4:1, and I use the slowest attack and fastest release that the compressor will do. So it's really only getting just a couple of dB of gain reduction. Okay, so to get the multi-track drums into Nuendo, we're going to take the direct outs of the mixer, which are here on this row of outputs on the patch bay, and we're going to patch that to our inputs on the Motu interface there, and these are normaled, so we wouldn't really have to patch anything. It would just come right from the direct outs into the interface here. We could just pull it up on Nuendo and record, enable those tracks, and go. But since we're gonna take the kick and snare into the compressor, we have to patch in and out of the direct outs through the compressor. So to do that, we're going to take the output here, the direct out, to the input of compressor channel 1, take the out of the compressor back in to Pro Tools in. So we have the kick drum here coming up on channel 1. We'll make sure that we have our mic selected and not the line level. We'll bring our preamp up to 0, and I have my EQ in here, and I know that I want to take off some in the high here, but mostly Right here at 350, I want to take out just a few dBs out of the kick drum, and we'll print that, and maybe just a little boost in the low at 60 Hertz. So a notch out a few dBs at 350 and just a slight boost at 60 Hertz. And that's going to be pan center. We'll do basically the same thing with the snare drum, except for no boost at 60. We'll take 350 and notch that out maybe a little more than what we had before, and take some of the high out. Bring our toms up. So once we track the toms, we'll do the panning in the DAW, and then our overheads are going to go left and right. The overheads, being pencil condenser mics, are going to need phantom power, so we'll go ahead and put that on now. Okay, I think that covers it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the bell for notifications. And if you found this video useful or helpful, consider joining me over at my Patreon. Link is in the description below. Your support there would be most appreciated, and would help me to continue making this content. But either way, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.